After 20 years as a federal judge, I returned home to find my daughter listed as deceased and my husband remarried. I opened my own case file. The death certificate was printed on standard state-issued paper, complete with an official seal, a coroner's signature, and a cause of death listed as accidental drowning. I found it while searching public records from my chamber's computer during a lunch break, 3 days after my daughter stopped returning my calls. The date of death was listed as August 15th, 6 months ago. The deceased's name was listed as Lily Ann Covington, my daughter, age 19. I stared at that document for 10 minutes straight, my half-eaten salad forgotten, my hands gripping the edge of my mahogany desk so hard my knuckles went white. According to the state of Ohio, my daughter had been dead for half a year. But I'd spoken to her on the phone 8 days ago. She told me about her sophomore year classes at Ohio State, complained about her roommate's boyfriend, asked if I could send money for textbooks. Her voice had been alive, animated, completely inconsistent with being 6 months deceased. I'd been serving as a federal district judge for the Southern District of Ohio for 2 decades, appointed at 38 after 15 years as a federal prosecutor. My career had been built on evidence, procedure, and the ruthless application of logic to complex legal problems. I'd presided over hundreds of cases involving fraud, corruption, organized crime, and civil rights violations. I'd sent people to prison for fabricating documents, for creating false identities, for manipulating systems for personal gain. And now someone had fabricated a death certificate for my daughter, and I was going to find out who and why with every resource my position and experience provided. I called Lily's cell phone immediately. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. Her voice on the recording sounded normal, cheerful, asking callers to leave a message. I hung up and called again. Same result. I tried 6 more times over the next 20 minutes, each call going straight to voicemail after 4 rings. I texted her. Lily, call me immediately. This is urgent. No response. I texted again. If I don't hear from you in 1 hour, I'm calling the police. Still nothing. The silence was wrong, incompatible with her usual pattern of responding within minutes even during classes. My husband, Daniel Covington, was a corporate attorney at a downtown firm, and we'd been married for 23 years. Our relationship had always been complicated by our competing careers, my long hours on the bench, his frequent travel for client meetings, and the fundamental tension between 2 people who'd built their identities around professional achievement rather than domestic life. But we'd made it work, raised Lily together, maintained what I'd believed was a solid if unromantic partnership. I called his office line. His secretary, a woman named Victoria, whom I'd met at firm events, answered with professional warmth. Judge Covington, how nice to hear from you. I'm afraid Mr. Covington is in depositions all afternoon. Can I take a message? I kept my voice level, judicial, betraying none of the panic crawling up my spine. Victoria, I need to speak with Daniel immediately. It's a family emergency regarding our daughter. Please pull him out of the deposition. There was a pause, long enough to feel deliberate. Judge Covington, I'll see what I can do. Please hold. The hold music played for 90 seconds before Victoria returned, her voice now careful, almost scripted. Judge Covington, Mr. Covington asked me to tell you that he'll call you back this evening. He says there's no emergency that can't wait until after business hours. The dismissiveness was shocking, completely unlike Daniel's usual responsiveness to anything involving Lily. Victoria, tell him I found Lily's death certificate. Tell him I know she's supposedly been dead for 6 months. Tell him if he doesn't call me in the next 5 minutes, I'm filing a missing persons report and contacting every law enforcement agency in Ohio. Another pause, then. I'll relay that message, Judge. Daniel called back in 3 minutes. His voice was flat, emotionless, the tone he used when delivering bad news to clients. Evelyn, I don't know what you think you've discovered, but this isn't the time or place to discuss family matters. I'm in the middle of important depositions. The casual use of my first name, which he rarely used in professional contexts, felt like a warning. I ignored it. Daniel, there's a death certificate filed with the state claiming Lily drowned 6 months ago, but I spoke to her last week. Someone has filed fraudulent documents and I need to know if you're aware of this. Where is our daughter? His silence lasted 5 seconds too long. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, become colder, more distant. Evelyn, Lily is gone. She died in August. We held a memorial service. You weren't there because you were handling that racketeering trial in Cincinnati and couldn't take time off. I sent you the details, but you said the trial was too important to interrupt. Don't pretend now that you don't remember. The statement was so outrageous, so completely contradicted by reality, that I actually laughed. Daniel, I spoke to Lily 8 days ago. On the phone. She was alive, discussing her classes. What are you talking about? You're confused, Evelyn. The stress of your position is affecting your memory. I think you should speak to someone. Maybe take some time off. I have to go. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my chambers staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. My husband had just told me our daughter was dead, claimed there had been a memorial service I didn't attend, and suggested I was experiencing memory problems or mental health issues, but I had concrete evidence contradicting everything he'd said. Text message records showing recent conversations with Lily, phone logs proving calls as recent as 8 days ago, and my own clear recollection of those interactions. I pulled up my cell phone records through my carrier's website, searching for Lily's number. What I found made my stomach drop. The most recent call to her number was listed as August 14th, the day before her alleged death date. Every call after that date showed as attempted but never connected, with no indication I'd spoken to anyone. But I knew, with absolute certainty, that I'd talked to Lily multiple times since August. I remembered the conversations in detail, remembered her voice, her complaints about professors, her excitement about joining a new student organization. Those memories were vivid, specific, impossible to fabricate. Unless they were fabricated. Unless I was experiencing exactly what Daniel suggested: confusion, false memories, some kind of cognitive breakdown brought on by stress. I'd presided over cases involving witnesses with false memories, understood how unreliable human recollection could be under pressure. But this felt different. This felt deliberate, like someone was gaslighting me, manipulating evidence to make me doubt my own sanity. I needed independent verification, needed someone who could confirm whether I was experiencing reality accurately or whether I was genuinely losing my grip on what was real. I called my law clerk, Andrew Fitzgerald, a brilliant recent law school graduate who'd been working with me for 18 months. Andrew, I need you to do something unusual, and I need you to not ask questions until after you've done it. Pull my phone records from the court's administrative systems for the past 6 months. Cross-reference every call I made to my daughter's cell number. And check my email, both professional and personal accounts, for any messages from or about Lily. Print everything and bring it to my chambers immediately. Andrew's voice reflected confusion, but also trust. Of course, Judge Covington. I'll have it within 30 minutes. While I waited, I searched for Lily's social media accounts. Her Instagram, which she updated constantly with photos from campus, parties, and daily life, showed no new posts since August 13th. Her last post was a photo of herself at a lake, wearing a blue swimsuit, smiling at the camera with summer sunlight making her blonde hair glow. The caption read, "Last weekend before classes start, making it count." The comments below were typical, friends responding with emojis and brief messages. But then, scrolling down, I found comments from September, October, November. "Miss you so much. Can't believe you're gone. Rest in peace, beautiful soul." Dozens of them, from people I recognized as Lily's friends, roommates, classmates. I clicked on her Facebook page, which she used less frequently but maintained for family connections. The page had been memorialized, converted to a tribute page with a banner reading, "Remembering Lily Ann Covington." Posts from friends and relatives filled the timeline, sharing memories, expressing grief, posting photos from what they described as her memorial service. I recognized faces in those photos. Daniel standing next to a display board covered with pictures of Lily, looking appropriately somber. My sister Rachel, whom I hadn't spoken to in months due to our demanding schedules, hugging Daniel in what appeared to be a church or funeral home. Lily's roommate from freshman year, a girl named Jenna, crying while holding a framed photograph. The evidence was overwhelming, consistent, corroborated by multiple independent sources. According to social media, according to public records, according to my own husband, Lily had died 6 months ago. But my memories said otherwise. I remembered conversations, text exchanges, the sound of her voice complaining about organic chemistry exams. Either I was experiencing a complete psychological breakdown involving elaborate false memories, or someone had orchestrated an impossibly complex fraud involving death certificates, memorial services, social media manipulation, and the cooperation of dozens of people, including my own husband. Andrew knocked on my chamber's door exactly 28 minutes after I'd called him. He entered carrying a thick folder of printed documents, his expression concerned. "Judge Covington, I pulled everything you requested, but I need to ask, is everything okay? Some of this material is concerning." I took the folder from him, my hands steadier than I expected. "Thank you, Andrew. I'm investigating a potential fraud case, possibly involving identity theft and document fabrication. I need you to maintain strict confidentiality about this request. Don't discuss it with anyone, including other clerks or court staff. Understood?" He nodded, clearly wanting to ask more questions but respecting the boundaries I'd established. "Of course, Judge. If you need anything else, I'm available." After he left, I spread the documents across my desk. The phone records confirmed what I'd seen online. No successful calls to Lily's number after August 14th. My email accounts showed no messages from her after that date either. But I found something else, something that made my pulse accelerate. In my personal email trash folder, I found dozens of deleted messages from August through November, all from my own account to Lily's account. The messages were strange, rambling, discussing conversations we'd allegedly had, asking about classes and social life, responding to questions she'd supposedly asked. They were written in my style, using my typical phrases and sentence structure, but I had no memory of sending them. I checked the email headers, examining the technical details that most users never see. The messages were sent from my personal laptop, using my home internet connection, at times when I would have been home. They weren't forgeries sent from remote locations. They were genuine emails sent from my own devices, but I had absolutely no recollection of writing them. This was evidence of something far more disturbing than simple fraud. Either someone had access to my personal devices and was impersonating me electronically, or I was genuinely experiencing memory loss so severe that I was performing complex tasks with no subsequent recollection. I needed medical evaluation to rule out neurological conditions that could cause this type of selective amnesia. I also needed legal expertise from someone outside my immediate circle who could investigate without prejudice or conflict of interest. And I needed to know definitively whether my daughter was alive or dead. The death certificate claimed accidental drowning. If she'd truly died, there would be police reports, coroner's findings, witness statements. If those documents didn't exist or showed inconsistencies, that would prove fraud. If they were comprehensive and legitimate, that would prove my memories were false and I needed immediate medical intervention. I called Dr. Margaret Ashford, my primary physician for 15 years, a woman in her late 50s with extensive experience in both internal medicine and geriatric care. Margaret, I need to schedule an appointment immediately for neurological evaluation. I'm experiencing what might be false memories or significant memory gaps, and I need to rule out medical causes before pursuing other explanations. Dr. Ashford's voice shifted from friendly to professional concern. Evelyn, can you describe the symptoms more specifically? Are you experiencing confusion about recent events, difficulty forming new memories, or gaps in your recollection of past events? I explained the situation carefully, focusing on medical symptoms rather than the conspiracy implications. The discrepancy between my memories of recent conversations with Lily and the complete absence of evidence those conversations occurred, the emails I'd apparently sent but couldn't remember writing, the suggestion from my husband that I was confused and needed help. Margaret listened without interrupting, then spoke with careful precision. Evelyn, what you're describing could be consistent with several neurological conditions, including early-onset Alzheimer's, temporal lobe epilepsy causing complex partial seizures, or dissociative disorders related to extreme stress. It could also be medication-related if you've started any new prescriptions recently. I want to see you tomorrow morning, first appointment. We'll do comprehensive cognitive testing, blood work, and I'll arrange for an MRI to rule out structural abnormalities. In the meantime, I want you to document everything you remember about these alleged conversations. Write them down while the memories are fresh. The appointment was scheduled for 8 a.m. the following day. That gave me 18 hours to investigate other aspects of this situation before potentially discovering I had a brain tumor or degenerative disease affecting my memory and cognition. I left the courthouse at 4 p.m., earlier than my usual 7 or 8 p.m. departure, and drove directly to Ohio State's campus where Lily had been enrolled. Her dormitory was a modern building on North Campus, housing predominantly sophomores. I'd visited once during move-in weekend last year, helped her carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs, met her roommate briefly. The residential life office was staffed by a young woman with purple streaks in her hair, who looked up from her computer with practiced helpfulness. Can I help you find someone? I showed her my judicial identification, which still carried authority even outside my courtroom. I'm Judge Evelyn Covington, Federal District Court. I need information about a student named Lily Ann Covington. She's my daughter, and I'm trying to verify her current status. The young woman's expression changed immediately, shifting from helpful to uncomfortable. Judge Covington, I'm so sorry for your loss. Lily was a wonderful student. Everyone here was devastated when we heard what happened. The confirmation hit harder than expected. This stranger, someone who had no reason to participate in any conspiracy against me, believed my daughter was dead. Can you tell me what you were told happened? What information did the university receive? The woman pulled up files on her computer, reading carefully. According to our records, Lily Covington was reported deceased on August 16th. The university received official notification from her father, Daniel Covington, along with a death certificate. We processed the withdrawal, refunded tuition on a prorated basis, and sent condolence messages to the family. Her roommate was offered counseling services and the option to switch rooms, though she chose to stay where she was. I kept my voice level, judicial, revealing nothing of the chaos in my mind. Do you still have contact information for her roommate? I'd like to speak with her. The woman hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the request. I can provide her name, but I'd need her permission before giving out contact information. Her name is Jenna Whitmore. She's likely in her room right now if you want to visit the dorm. I thanked her and walked to the dormitory, my mind processing the implications of what I'd just learned. The university had official records of Lily's death, had processed administrative procedures, had offered support services to her roommate. This wasn't a simple case of fraudulent documents. This was a comprehensive institutional response to what they believed was a genuine death. Jenna Whitmore answered her dorm room door wearing sweatpants and a university hoodie, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. When she saw me, her face went pale. Mrs. Covington? I didn't expect to see you. Is everything okay? The recognition surprised me. I'd met Jenna only once, very briefly, yet she knew me immediately. Jenna, I need to talk to you about Lily. Can I come in? She stepped back, allowing me into a small double room decorated with typical college chaos. Textbooks scattered across desks, clothes draped over chairs, posters covering walls. One side of the room was clearly occupied, bed made, desk organized. The other side was empty, stripped bare, looking abandoned. That was Lily's side, Jenna said quietly, following my gaze. I couldn't bring myself to request a new roommate. It felt disrespectful somehow, like I was trying to replace her. I sat in the desk chair on the occupied side, gesturing for Jenna to sit on her bed. Jenna, I need you to tell me everything you remember about what happened to Lily in August. Everything. Even if you think I already know it. This is important. Jenna's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Lily went to Lake Erie with some friends during the last weekend before fall semester. It was supposed to be a fun trip, celebrating before classes started. But something went wrong. She went swimming alone early in the morning before anyone else was awake. When her friends woke up, they found her phone and towel on the beach, but she was gone. The Coast Guard searched for 6 hours before they found her body about a mile down the shoreline. They said she must have gotten caught in a riptide or suffered a cramp. The water was cold that morning. The story was detailed, specific, told with the emotion of someone who genuinely lost a friend. Did you identify her body? Did you see her after she died? Jenna shook her head. No, her father handled all of that. He said it would be too traumatic for her friends. We went to the memorial service a week later, but it was closed casket. Mr. Covington said Lily wouldn't have wanted people to see her that way, and we all understood. The service was beautiful, though. Lots of people spoke about her, shared memories. Your sister gave a really moving eulogy. My sister Rachel had given a eulogy at my daughter's funeral, and I hadn't been there. According to everyone's collective memory, I'd been too busy with a trial to attend my own child's memorial service. The cruelty of that detail, whether true or fabricated, made my chest tighten. Jenna, did you ever hear from me after Lily died? Did I call you, email you, anything? She looked confused. No, Mrs. Covington. I assumed you were dealing with your grief privately. Mr. Covington mentioned you were having a hard time coping, that you'd thrown yourself into work to avoid facing the loss. We all understood. Everyone grieves differently. I left the dormitory feeling less certain about reality than when I'd entered. Jenna's account was consistent with the death certificate, with the social media posts, with the university records. She'd described specific details about a lake trip, a drowning, a search by the Coast Guard. Those were facts that could be verified or disproven through official channels. If the Coast Guard had actually conducted a search and recovery operation in August, there would be reports, logs, documentation. If Lily's body had actually been recovered, there would be autopsy results, coroner's findings, official cause of death determinations. I called my sister Rachel from my car, parked outside the dormitory. We'd been close growing up, but our adult lives had pulled us in different directions. She lived in Cleveland, worked as a hospital administrator, and we typically saw each other only at holidays. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, her voice warm but surprised. Evelyn, is everything okay? You usually don't call except for birthdays or Christmas. I chose my words carefully. Rachel, I need to ask you about something sensitive. I've been reviewing some records and I need you to tell me about Lily's death in August. What do you remember about that time? The silence on the other end lasted long enough to become uncomfortable. When Rachel spoke again, her voice had changed completely, become tight with anger and old pain. Are you serious right now? You want me to relive that horror? Evelyn, you weren't there. You were too busy with your important trial to come to your own daughter's funeral. Do you have any idea how that felt for the rest of us? Watching Daniel fall apart while you sent a brief email saying you couldn't make it. I gave the eulogy you should have given. I held Daniel while he sobbed. I did your job because you couldn't be bothered to take a day off from your precious career. The bitterness in her voice was genuine, built on months of accumulated resentment. Rachel, please listen to me. I have no memory of any of this. I remember talking to Lily last week. I remember conversations we had in September, October, November. I don't remember her dying, don't remember any trial that would have prevented me from attending her funeral. I need you to tell me what actually happened because I think something very wrong is going on. Rachel's laugh was harsh, disbelieving. Evelyn, are you telling me you don't remember your own daughter's death? That you've somehow forgotten 6 months of your life? That's insane. You need help, professional help. This is beyond grief. This is some kind of breakdown. But Rachel was my sister, someone who'd known me for 43 years. If I was genuinely experiencing false memories or cognitive decline, she'd recognize the signs of real distress versus manipulation. Rachel, I'm serious. I found Lily's death certificate today by accident while searching public records. Until 3 hours ago, I believed she was alive, attending Ohio State, preparing for finals. Now everyone is telling me she drowned 6 months ago, that I missed her funeral, that I've been behaving strangely. But I have no memory of any of this. I need you to help me understand what's happening. The silence this time was different, thoughtful rather than angry. Evelyn, you really don't remember? The police calling Daniel, the identification of the body, the memorial service, the phone calls we had where you sobbed about how you'd failed as a mother? None of that? None of it, I confirmed. My last clear memory of Lily is talking to her 8 days ago about her chemistry class. Before that, I remember conversations throughout the fall semester. I remember her telling me about joining a pre-law society, about a boy she was dating, about considering changing her major. Those memories feel absolutely real, but apparently they never happened. Rachel was quiet again, processing. Evelyn, if what you're saying is true, if you genuinely have no memory of the past 6 months, that's a serious medical emergency. You need to see a neurologist immediately. This could be a tumor, a stroke, early onset Alzheimer's, anything. But Evelyn, I was at that funeral. I saw the casket. I talked to the Coast Guard officer who found her body. I read the autopsy report because I didn't trust the initial findings. Lily is dead. That's a fact, no matter what your memory tells you. The conversation ended with Rachel insisting I call my doctor and schedule an emergency appointment, promising she'd drive to Columbus tomorrow if I needed support. I sat in my car outside the dormitory as evening darkness gathered, trying to reconcile two incompatible realities. Either I'd experienced catastrophic memory loss affecting 6 months of my life, including the death of my daughter, or everyone around me was participating in an elaborate conspiracy involving fake deaths, fraudulent documents, and coordinated lies. The medical explanation was more probable, aligned with basic logic and Occam's razor. But something about it felt wrong. Felt like I was being maneuvered into accepting a narrative that served someone else's purpose. I drove to the Franklin County Coroner's Office, which stayed open until 8 p.m. for administrative matters. Dr. Thomas Reeves, the elected coroner, had served in that position for 12 years, and I'd worked with him professionally on several cases where autopsy findings were relevant to criminal proceedings. His office was institutional and sterile, decorated with medical certifications and public health awards. When I appeared at his door, he looked up from paperwork with surprise. "Judge Covington, this is unexpected. What brings you here after hours?" I closed his office door behind me, establishing privacy. "Tom, I need to see the autopsy report for Lily Ann Covington, deceased August 15th. She was my daughter, and I'm reviewing the circumstances of her death." His expression shifted to sympathy, then confusion. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you'd want to review those files. Most family members prefer not to see the technical details, but I can pull the file if you're certain you want to see it. Give me a moment." He disappeared into an adjacent records room and returned carrying a manila folder with official stamps and signatures covering the exterior. "The original report is sealed as part of the investigation, but I can let you review it here in my office. I need to warn you, the findings are detailed and potentially distressing." The autopsy report was 23 pages long, filled with medical terminology, measurements, and clinical observations. Cause of death, asphyxiation by drowning. Time of death, estimated between 5 and 7 a.m. on August 15th. The body showed signs consistent with prolonged immersion in cold water, no evidence of trauma or foul play, toxicology results negative for drugs or alcohol. The deceased was identified through dental records provided by family dentist Dr. Philip Brennan, who'd confirmed the match. Photographs attached to the report showed a young woman's body, pale and lifeless, facial features distorted by water exposure, but recognizable as similar to Lily's general appearance. But something was wrong with the photographs. I'd seen hundreds of autopsy photos during my career as a prosecutor and judge, knew how to read them professionally rather than emotionally. These photos showed inconsistencies, subtle but present. The body's hair color was lighter than Lily's natural dark blonde, closer to platinum or bleached. The dental identification mentioned a filling in the lower left molar, but Lily had never had cavities. Her dental records were perfect. The body's height was listed as 5 feet 8 inches, but Lily was 5 feet 10, tall enough that she'd always stood out in family photos. Individual discrepancies could be explained by measurement errors, documentation mistakes, or changes I wasn't aware of. But multiple inconsistencies suggested this wasn't my daughter's body. "Tom, these dental records, can you show me the original comparison files used for identification?" Dr. Reeves pulled up digital scans on his computer, displaying dental x-rays side by side with the deceased's post-mortem dental examination. The match appeared convincing, showed the same configuration of teeth, the same filling locations, the same general structure. But when I looked closer at the dates, something jumped out. The comparative dental records were dated August 10th, 5 days before the alleged death. They weren't historical records from Lily's regular dentist. They were recent x-rays, taken just days before she supposedly drowned. "Tom, why would someone get new dental x-rays 5 days before dying in an accidental drowning? That timing seems unusual." He frowned, scrolling through digital files. "That is odd. Usually we compare against existing dental records from the person's regular dentist. Let me check the source on these x-rays." He clicked through several screens, examining metadata and file properties. "These were provided directly by Daniel Covington, your husband, on August 16th when he came to identify the body. He said they were recent x-rays from a dental checkup. We accepted them as legitimate identification documentation because family members typically don't fabricate dental records, and the match to the deceased appeared accurate. But Daniel could have fabricated those records if he'd had access to someone else's dental x-rays, someone who resembled Lily closely enough to pass initial examination. If the body in these photographs wasn't actually Lily, if it was someone else who drowned or been killed and substituted, then the dental records could have been manipulated to create a false match. This was the kind of evidence tampering I'd seen in sophisticated fraud cases, where criminals created paper trails to support false narratives. Tom, I need you to do something for me, and I need you to keep it absolutely confidential. I want DNA testing done on tissue samples from this autopsy. I want those results compared against my DNA to confirm biological relationship. Can you arrange that without notifying anyone else? Dr. Reeves looked troubled but nodded slowly. I can submit samples to the state lab for priority DNA analysis under the justification of confirming identity in a potential fraud investigation. The results would take approximately 5 to 7 days with expedited processing. But Evelyn, if you're suggesting this body isn't your daughter, that raises serious questions about what happened to the actual deceased person and where your daughter is if she's alive. This could be a criminal matter involving homicide, identity theft, insurance fraud, possibly multiple conspiracies. Are you prepared for what we might find? I was prepared for truth, whatever form it took. If the DNA matched and confirmed this body was Lily, then I needed immediate medical intervention for whatever was causing my false memories and cognitive dysfunction. If the DNA didn't match, then someone had orchestrated an elaborate fraud involving a substitute body, falsified records, and the cooperation or deception of multiple institutions and individuals. Either scenario was devastating, but at least one would provide answers instead of leaving me trapped between contradictory realities. Submit the samples, Tom. I'll handle whatever the results reveal. Just make sure no one else knows about this test until we have definitive answers. I left the coroner's office at 8:30 p.m. and drove home to the house Daniel and I had shared for 19 years, a colonial-style home in Upper Arlington with a manicured lawn and mature trees. The lights were on inside when I pulled into the driveway. Daniel's Mercedes parked in the garage beside the empty space where my Lexus usually sat. I entered through the front door using my key, calling out as I entered. Daniel, I'm home. We need to talk. The response came from the living room, but it wasn't Daniel's voice. It was female, unfamiliar, young. A woman appeared in the hallway, mid-20s, professionally dressed in a business suit, blonde hair styled perfectly. She looked at me with surprise and confusion. I'm sorry, can I help you? Are you looking for someone? The presumption in her voice, the territorial way she stood in my hallway, triggered immediate understanding. This woman lived here, felt comfortable here, acted like I was the intruder. I'm Evelyn Covington. This is my house. Who are you and why are you in my home? The woman's expression shifted from confusion to something approaching pity. Mrs. Covington, I'm Stephanie Wells. I'm Daniel's wife. We've been married for 3 months now. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Did someone tell you to come here? The words hit like physical blows. Daniel's wife, married for 3 months. While I was still legally married to him, while I'd been living in this house, sleeping in the master bedroom, maintaining a life that apparently no longer existed according to everyone but me. That's impossible. I'm Daniel's wife. We've been married for 23 years. We have a daughter named Lily. I live here. This is my house. Stephanie's expression became more concerned, almost frightened. Mrs. Covington, I think you need to sit down. Daniel mentioned you'd been having difficulties since Lily's death, that you were experiencing some kind of breakdown. I'm going to call him right now. Please, just sit down and wait for him to get home. I didn't sit. I walked past her into the living room, which had been redecorated since I'd last seen it. The furniture was different, modern pieces replacing the traditional set Daniel and I had chosen together. The walls were painted a different color. The artwork changed, the entire space transformed into something I didn't recognize. Family photos had been removed from the mantel, replaced with pictures of Daniel and Stephanie, wedding photos, vacation shots, images of a life I had no part in. When did this happen? When did you allegedly marry Daniel? Stephanie pulled out her phone, texting rapidly while watching me warily. We got married on October 18th. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family. Daniel said you were invited but declined to attend because it was too painful. He said you were struggling with grief and had moved out of the house to give us space. October 18th. 3 months ago, during a time when I clearly remembered living in this house, sleeping in my bed, maintaining my normal routine of work and home life. But according to Stephanie, according to the redecorated rooms and changed locks, I hadn't been here in months. Either my entire memory of the past 6 months was fabricated, or I was standing in the middle of the most sophisticated gaslighting operation I'd ever encountered. Daniel arrived home 20 minutes later, his expression weary but unsurprised when he saw me. Evelyn, we talked about this. You can't keep coming here. This is Stephanie's home now. You have your own place. I'll call Dr. Ashford and see if she can adjust your medications. I stood my ground, using the voice I used in the courtroom when establishing authority. Daniel, I want answers and I want them now. There's a death certificate claiming Lily drowned in August. There's a memorial service I supposedly didn't attend. There's a marriage license saying you married this woman in October. There are 6 months of my life that everyone says happened differently than I remember. Either I'm experiencing catastrophic mental illness, or you've orchestrated a fraud so elaborate it involves government documents, multiple witnesses, and institutional cooperation. Which is it? Daniel's face remained impassive, controlled, the expression he used during difficult negotiations. Evelyn, you're sick. You've been sick since Lily died. The grief triggered some kind of psychotic break. You started having delusions, false memories, confused thinking. Dr. Ashford has documented everything. You're supposed to be taking medication, attending therapy, living in a supervised facility. Instead, you keep showing up here, insisting on a reality that doesn't exist. I've been patient, but this needs to stop. Show me the documentation, I demanded. Show me Dr. Ashford's records. Show me the prescription history. Show me evidence of this mental illness you're describing. I want to see the paper trail. Daniel pulled out his phone, scrolling through files. I have copies of everything. Dr. Ashford diagnosed you with delusional disorder and prescribed antipsychotic medications. You were admitted to Riverside Psychiatric Hospital for 2 weeks in September for stabilization. You were released to outpatient care with the understanding you'd live in a supervised apartment and continue treatment. But you stopped taking your medications, stopped attending appointments, and started showing up here claiming to still be married to me and insisting Lily is alive. He showed me documents on his phone screen, psychiatric evaluation forms, prescription records, discharge summaries from Riverside Psychiatric Hospital, all bearing Dr. Ashford's signature, all describing a patient named Evelyn Covington experiencing severe delusions and impaired reality testing. But I'd never been admitted to any psychiatric hospital. I'd never been prescribed antipsychotic medications. I'd been working full-time as a federal judge, presiding over cases, writing opinions, conducting hearings. My law clerks would have noticed if I was experiencing psychotic symptoms. My colleagues would have intervened if I showed signs of impaired judgment or confused thinking. This was fabrication, sophisticated forgery designed to make me doubt my own sanity. Daniel, I'm a federal judge. I've been on the bench continuously for the past 6 months. I have dozens of witnesses who can confirm I've been functioning normally, performing complex legal analysis, conducting trials. Your documents are forgeries, and I'm going to prove it. But right now, I want to know where Lily is. What did you do to our daughter? His expression changed then, became colder, more calculating. Evelyn, if you continue making these accusations, I'll have to seek a psychiatric hold order. You're clearly a danger to yourself and possibly others. You need help, whether you believe it or not. It was a threat, delivered calmly but seriously. If he convinced a judge I was mentally ill and dangerous, I could be involuntarily committed for evaluation, held against my will while my credibility was destroyed, and any investigation I tried to conduct was dismissed as delusional. I needed to retreat, regroup, gather evidence before he could use institutional power against me the way I'd seen it used against so many others. I left without further argument, drove to a hotel near the courthouse, and checked in under an alias using cash. My credit cards could be tracked, my movements monitored if Daniel was truly orchestrating some kind of conspiracy. I needed to stay off the radar while I investigated, needed to build my case carefully before exposing what I suspected was a massive fraud. The hotel room was anonymous and clean, exactly what I needed. I sat on the bed with my laptop, searching for evidence that would prove my sanity and reveal the truth about Lily's alleged death. I started with court records, pulling up my own case docket for the past 6 months. Every case I'd presided over was documented. Every hearing I'd conducted was recorded. Every opinion I'd written was filed. The record showed continuous judicial activity from August through the present. No gaps, no medical leaves, no indication of impaired function. I downloaded copies of my recent written opinions, 23 detailed legal analyses covering federal criminal cases, civil rights disputes, and complex litigation matters. Each opinion demonstrated clear thinking, sophisticated legal reasoning, and normal cognitive function. If I was experiencing delusional disorder severe enough to require psychiatric hospitalization, these documents wouldn't exist or would show obvious signs of impaired thinking. Next, I pulled personnel records from the court's administrative office, requesting my attendance logs, sick day usage, and any disciplinary or medical leave documentation. The response came via automated email within minutes. My attendance for the past 6 months showed perfect consistency: no sick days, no medical leaves, no unexplained absences. I'd been present in chambers or courtroom every business day without exception. This was objective evidence created by court systems designed to track judicial performance, that I'd been functioning normally throughout the exact period when Daniel claimed I'd been hospitalized and experiencing psychotic symptoms. But the psychiatric hospital records Daniel had shown me bore Dr. Ashford's signature, appeared to be legitimate medical documents from a real facility. Either those documents were sophisticated forgeries, or Dr. Ashford had been compromised somehow, convinced or coerced into creating false records. I needed to confront her directly, needed to determine whether she'd actually diagnosed me with delusional disorder, or whether her signature had been forged on fabricated documents. But that confrontation needed to wait until after my scheduled appointment tomorrow morning, when I'd undergo the neurological evaluation that would either confirm or disprove claims of cognitive impairment. I couldn't sleep, spent the night reviewing evidence, building timelines, identifying inconsistencies in the narrative I'd been presented with. The death certificate listed cause of death as drowning, but showed dental records that didn't match Lily's actual dental history. The autopsy report described a body with physical characteristics that differed from Lily's documented height and coloring. The memorial service had apparently occurred during a week when I had clear court records showing I'd been presiding over a trial, making it impossible for me to have been absent. Daniel's marriage to Stephanie was dated October 18th, but Ohio law required a 90-day waiting period after divorce before remarriage, and Daniel and I had never divorced. That marriage license was either fraudulent or obtained through false representation. The pattern suggested coordinated fraud rather than my own mental illness. But I needed authoritative, independent verification before I could expose it publicly. Tomorrow's medical appointment would provide neurological testing. Dr. Reeves would provide DNA results within a week. I needed one more piece of evidence, something that would prove definitively whether the death certificate and autopsy report were legitimate or fabricated. I needed to speak with the Coast Guard officers who'd allegedly conducted the search and recovery operation at Lake Erie in August. The next morning, I arrived at Dr. Ashford's office at 8 a.m. as scheduled. Her receptionist greeted me warmly, no indication that she considered me a psychiatric patient or security risk. I was shown into an examination room where Dr. Ashford joined me, carrying a tablet loaded with test protocols. Evelyn, thank you for coming in. Let's start with some basic cognitive screening, then we'll discuss MRI scheduling and blood work. I want you to know that whatever we find, we'll address it comprehensively and aggressively. Memory issues caught early often respond well to treatment. I let her conduct the cognitive testing, answering questions about current events, performing memory exercises, completing visual spatial tasks. The tests were standard screening tools for dementia and cognitive decline, and I knew I was performing well, showing no signs of impairment. After 40 minutes of testing, Dr. Ashford reviewed the results with surprise evident in her expression. Evelyn, your scores are perfect. You're performing at the 98th percentile for your age group across all measures. There's no indication of cognitive decline, memory impairment, or executive function problems. This is actually unusual given the symptoms you described yesterday. Tell me more about these false memories you mentioned. I described the situation in detail. The death certificate I'd discovered, the conversations everyone claimed I'd had but couldn't remember, the psychiatric records Daniel had shown me bearing her signature. Dr. Ashford listened with growing concern, then asked permission to access my medical files from her practice management system. She pulled up my electronic health record, scrolling through years of appointments, test results, and clinical notes. Evelyn, according to my records, your last appointment was 6 months ago for your annual physical. The examination was unremarkable. All test results normal, no medications prescribed. I have no record of diagnosing you with delusional disorder, no documentation of psychiatric hospitalizations, no prescriptions for antipsychotic medications. If Daniel showed you documents with my signature making those claims, they're forgeries. The confirmation was both relieving and terrifying. I wasn't experiencing cognitive decline or mental illness, but someone had forged medical documents using Dr. Ashford's credentials to support a false narrative about my mental health. Margaret, I need you to document this appointment carefully. Note that I underwent cognitive testing and showed no impairment, that I have no history of psychiatric treatment in your care, that any documents claiming otherwise are fraudulent. I'm going to need your testimony and records to disprove claims that I'm mentally ill. She nodded seriously. I'll prepare detailed documentation immediately. Evelyn, if someone is forging medical records using my credentials, that's a crime. I'm obligated to report it to medical licensing boards and potentially law enforcement. This is beyond a personal dispute. This is professional fraud that could affect patient care and medical record integrity. I left Dr. Ashford's office with written documentation of my cognitive test results and her formal statement that she'd never diagnosed me with psychiatric conditions or prescribed antipsychotic medications. This was ammunition against Daniel's narrative, proof that his claims of my mental illness were fabricated. But I still needed to understand the scope of his conspiracy, needed to determine how many people were involved and what their ultimate goal was. If Lily was alive, where was she? If she was truly dead, whose body had been substituted and identified as hers? And why would Daniel orchestrate such an elaborate deception? The answer came from an unexpected source. My law clerk Andrew called my cell phone at 10 a.m., his voice urgent. Judge Covington, something strange just happened. A woman claiming to be your sister called the court administrative office, asking to speak with someone about your mental health status. She told the chief clerk you'd been diagnosed with delusional disorder and were supposed to be on medical leave. The clerk refused to confirm anything and called me to verify whether you were experiencing any issues. I told her you'd been functioning perfectly normally and showed no signs of impairment. But Judge, I thought you should know someone's actively trying to undermine your professional standing. Rachel had called the courthouse, attempting to have me placed on medical leave based on claims of psychiatric illness. My own sister, someone I'd trusted, was participating in this conspiracy. But was she a willing participant, convinced I was genuinely ill, or had she been deceived by Daniel into believing false information? I needed to confront her directly, needed to understand her role in what was happening. I drove to Cleveland, arriving at Rachel's office at University Hospitals by noon. Her secretary tried to intercept me, but I walked past her directly into Rachel's private office and closed the door. Rachel looked up from her computer with genuine alarm. Evelyn, what are you doing here? You should be in treatment, not driving around making surprise visits. I called your courthouse because I'm worried about you. Daniel said you've been refusing to take your medications, that you're having severe delusions about Lily being alive. This isn't something you can ignore. You need help. I sat across from her desk, maintaining eye contact with the intensity I used when cross-examining hostile witnesses. Rachel, I just came from Dr. Ashford's office. She conducted comprehensive cognitive testing. I scored in the 98th percentile, showing no signs of memory impairment, confusion, or psychiatric symptoms. Dr. Ashford has no record of diagnosing me with delusional disorder, never prescribed antipsychotic medications, and states that any documents claiming otherwise are forgeries. I'm not mentally ill. Someone is creating fake medical records to make it appear I am. Rachel's expression shifted between confusion and defensive certainty. That's impossible. Daniel showed me discharge papers from Riverside Psychiatric Hospital. He showed me prescriptions with Dr. Ashford's name on them. He explained how you'd been deteriorating since Lily's death, how you'd stopped being able to distinguish reality from delusion. He was crying when he told me, genuinely devastated about watching you decline. Why would he fabricate all of that? The question was valid, demanded an answer I was still assembling. Rachel, think about this logically. I'm a sitting federal judge. I've been presiding over complex cases for the past 6 months without a single complaint about my performance or judgment. My law clerks work with me daily and notice no cognitive problems. Court records show perfect attendance. How could I be simultaneously experiencing severe psychiatric impairment requiring hospitalization and performing complex judicial duties without anyone noticing? Rachel hesitated, the prosecutor's daughter in her recognizing the logical problem. Maybe the symptoms are intermittent, maybe you're functional in professional contexts but impaired in personal situations? I shook my head. That's not how delusional disorder works. It doesn't compartmentalize neatly between professional and personal functioning. If I was having delusions severe enough to believe a dead daughter is alive, that cognitive impairment would manifest in my legal work, in my written opinions, in my conduct during trials. But my recent opinions demonstrate sophisticated legal reasoning. I submitted copies to Dr. Ashford as evidence of normal cognitive function. Rachel, someone is lying to you. Someone wants you to believe I'm mentally ill so you'll help isolate me, undermine my credibility, make it easier to have me committed against my will. But the death certificate, Rachel protested, her voice weakening. The autopsy report, the Coast Guard search. I saw documentation of all of it. How do you explain that? I pulled up the autopsy report on my phone, showing her the photographs. Look at these images carefully. This body is listed as 5 feet 8 inches tall. Lily was 5 feet 10. This body has lighter hair color than Lily's natural dark blonde. The dental records used for identification were dated 5 days before the alleged death, which is unusual timing. I've requested DNA testing to confirm biological relationship. If this body isn't actually Lily, then someone substituted a different drowning victim and manipulated records to create a false identification. Rachel examined the photographs, her medical background allowing her to assess the clinical details with professional eye. These inconsistencies, they could be measurement errors or documentation mistakes, but you're right that the timing of those dental x-rays is strange. And this hair color does look lighter than I remember Lily's being. Evelyn, if you're right, if someone did substitute a body, that's not just fraud. That's potentially murder. That's conspiracy involving multiple institutions and possibly dozens of people. Who would have the resources and motive to orchestrate something that complex? The answer was becoming clear, though I resisted acknowledging it fully. Someone who wanted control of our assets, who wanted to eliminate me legally without physically harming me, who needed me declared mentally incompetent so they could access accounts, property, and resources held in my name. Rachel, Daniel stands to gain millions if I'm committed to psychiatric care. As my spouse, he'd control my estate, manage my assets, make decisions about my care. If I'm ruled incompetent, he gets everything without the complications of divorce or inheritance disputes. And if Lily is actually dead, if she really drowned in August, he'd be her sole surviving parent with control of any inheritance or trust funds established for her. Rachel's face went pale as the financial implications became clear. Evelyn, Mom and Dad's estate was divided between you and me, but you were named executor of Lily's trust fund, that $2 million educational trust they established before they died. If Lily is deceased and you're incompetent, Daniel would control those funds as your legal representative. He'd have access to everything. The trust fund. I'd forgotten about it. Hadn't thought about those funds in the chaos of the past 24 hours. My parents had established an irrevocable trust for Lily's education and future, with me named as trustee until Lily turned 25. If Lily was legally dead, those funds would normally revert to the estate and be distributed according to my parents' will. But if I was declared incompetent, Daniel as my spouse could petition the court for control of my assets, including my role as executor of the trust. No, Rachel, I need to access the trust documents immediately. I need to know the exact terms of distribution if Lily is deceased and what happens if the trustee is incapacitated. Can you help me get those files from Mom and Dad's attorney? Rachel nodded slowly, picking up her phone. Gregory Whitman handled the estate planning. He's still practicing in Cleveland. I'll call him right now. Within the hour, we had Gregory Whitman's complete file on the trust, delivered electronically with password protection. The trust documents were complex, but the relevant provisions were clear. If Lily died before age 25, the trust funds would be distributed to designated charitable organizations, unless the trustee determined there were extenuating circumstances requiring different disposition. The trustee, meaning me, had broad discretionary authority. But if the trustee was incapacitated or unable to serve, a successor trustee would be appointed by the probate court. Daniel, as my spouse, would have priority standing to be named successor trustee, giving him control of the $2 million. He needs you incompetent and Lily dead to access that money, Rachel said quietly, horror evident in her voice. If you're right, if he fabricated the death certificate and is trying to have you declared mentally ill, this is all about financial control. Evelyn, we need to go to the police. This is attempted fraud, possibly murder if the body in that autopsy isn't actually Lily. You can't investigate this alone anymore. But going to the police meant trusting institutions that might already be compromised, trusting investigators who might not believe a judge claiming her husband had faked their daughter's death and forged psychiatric records. I needed more evidence, needed the DNA results from Dr. Reeves, needed to verify the Coast Guard search records, needed proof so overwhelming that no one could dismiss my claims as delusions or paranoia. Rachel, I'll go to the police once I have DNA confirmation and verified Coast Guard records. Until then, I need you to help me find Lily. If she's alive, if Daniel has her hidden somewhere, we need to locate her before he realizes I'm investigating. If she's in danger, we can't wait for bureaucratic processes to unfold. We need to act now. Rachel hesitated, torn between procedural correctness and urgency. How would Daniel have hidden her? She's 19, enrolled in college, has friends and a social life. You can't just kidnap an adult and keep them hidden without anyone noticing. But you could convince an adult to disappear if you had leverage, if you threatened them or bribed them or convinced them it was necessary for some compelling reason. Or you could have harmed Lily, actually killed her, and substituted another body to avoid investigation. Both scenarios were possible, both equally horrifying. I called Dennis Kowalski, the private investigator from my earlier military deployment story. Wait, that's not right. I need a different investigator. I called a private investigator named Marcus. No, wait, I can't use that name. Let me revise. I called a private investigator named Lawrence Brennan, a former FBI agent who specialized in missing persons and fraud cases. I'd worked with him on several judicial matters where independent investigation was required. Lawrence had 23 years of federal law enforcement experience and a reputation for discretion and competence. I explained the situation from my hotel room, laying out the evidence of fabricated death certificates, forged psychiatric records, and financial motives. Lawrence listened without interrupting, taking notes. Judge Covington, what you're describing is complex conspiracy involving document fraud, potential identity theft, possible kidnapping or murder, and institutional corruption. If your husband has orchestrated this, he's had months to establish his narrative and create supporting documentation. Challenging that will require comprehensive evidence gathering and possibly covert investigation techniques. I'm going to need access to financial records, communication logs, travel history for both Daniel and Lily, and authorization to conduct surveillance if necessary. This isn't going to be quick or cheap. I authorized him to proceed with full investigation, provided credit card numbers for billing, and promised access to any resources he needed. Lawrence, start with Lily's digital footprint. Her social media stopped updating in August, but someone might have accessed her accounts after that date. Check for login locations, IP addresses, any indication her accounts were active after the alleged death date. Also investigate the woman Daniel married, Stephanie Wells. Find out her background, how she met Daniel, whether she has financial connections or criminal history that might be relevant. Lawrence's preliminary findings arrived via encrypted email 6 hours later. Lily's social media accounts showed no activity after August 13th, but account login records revealed attempts to access her email from Daniel's home IP address as recently as November. Someone in Daniel's house had been checking Lily's email, possibly monitoring for messages that might contradict the death narrative. Stephanie Wells's background was more interesting. She'd worked as a paralegal at Daniel's law firm for 18 months before they married, suggesting she'd had extended access to legal resources and document preparation tools. Her financial records showed unusual deposits totaling $80,000 in September and October, large cash infusions from untraceable sources. She'd used some of that money to pay off student loans and credit card debt, lifestyle improvements inconsistent with her paralegal salary. Those cash deposits could be payment for participation in the conspiracy, Lawrence noted in his report. If Stephanie helped Daniel prepare forged documents, create false records, or establish the second marriage fraudulently, she'd need compensation for the legal risks she was taking. $80,000 is substantial money for a paralegal, suggests she was being rewarded for significant involvement. The pattern was becoming clearer. Daniel had positioned Stephanie as his ally months before Lily's alleged death, possibly recruiting her to help execute his plan. They'd worked together to create the death certificate, forge psychiatric records, manipulate the autopsy and dental identification, and establish the fraudulent marriage. But the question remained, where was Lily? Lawrence's next report provided a potential answer. He'd checked airline records, bus tickets, and car rental databases for Lily's name after August 15th. No activity under her legal name, which made sense if she was supposed to be dead. But when he cross-referenced her social security number against employment records, something appeared. A company in Boulder, Colorado called Mountain Peak Consulting had a new employee listed in September, social security number matching Lily's, but the name on the employment records was listed as Lily Wells, Stephanie's last name. Judge Covington, Lawrence wrote, I believe your daughter is alive and living in Colorado under an assumed identity. The employment records show her using Stephanie Wells' last name, suggesting a connection between them. It's possible Stephanie is Lily's biological mother, or has some other family relationship we haven't identified yet. Or Lily was convinced to use that name as part of the conspiracy. I recommend immediate contact with the Colorado employer to verify the employee's identity. I booked a flight to Denver that evening, arriving in Colorado at 11 p.m. local time. Lawrence had arranged for a local investigator to meet me, provide transportation, and assist with the contact attempt. We drove to Boulder the next morning, located the address for Mountain Peak Consulting, and waited outside until business hours. The company was a small digital marketing firm occupying a second-floor office in a converted warehouse. I entered alone, asked the receptionist if Lily Wells was available. The young woman at the desk checked her computer. Lily's working from home today. Can I give her a message? I provided my judicial business card, asked the receptionist to call Lily and say Judge Evelyn Covington needed to speak with her urgently about a legal matter. The receptionist made the call, spoke briefly, then hung up with a confused expression. She says she doesn't know anyone by that name and asked me not to give out her contact information to strangers. I'm sorry, Judge Covington, but I can't help you without her permission. I'd expected resistance, prepared for it. Tell Lily that her father Daniel claimed she drowned in Lake Erie 6 months ago. Tell her there's a death certificate filed in Ohio with her name on it. Tell her I need to know if she's safe or if she's being held against her will. This isn't a legal matter. This is a family emergency. The receptionist made a second call, this time speaking more urgently. After several minutes of conversation, she hung up and looked at me with sympathy. Lily says you can meet her at Riverside Coffee on Pearl Street in 30 minutes. She'll be wearing a blue jacket. I thanked her and drove to the coffee shop, arriving 15 minutes early to position myself with a clear view of the entrance. Lily arrived exactly on time, and the sight of her, alive and walking and real, made my chest tighten with relief so intense it was almost painful. She was thinner than I remembered, her hair cut shorter and dyed a reddish brown instead of her natural dark blonde. But it was unmistakably her, my daughter, breathing and living despite the death certificate that claimed otherwise. She sat across from me at a corner table, her expression guarded and hostile. What do you want, Judge Covington? Dad said you'd probably track me down eventually, said you wouldn't let go of the fiction that I'm dead. But I'm alive, as you can see, so whatever conspiracy theory you've built up about my death certificate is wrong. The tone was wrong. The formality of calling me Judge Covington instead of Mom, the defensive posture, the rehearsed quality of her statement. Lily, I'm your mother. Why are you calling me Judge Covington? What did your father tell you about me? She wouldn't meet my eyes. He told me you had a breakdown after he filed for divorce. He said you became delusional, started claiming we were still a family even though he'd moved on and remarried. He said you needed psychiatric care but refused treatment. He said the kindest thing we could do was make a clean break, let you believe I was dead so you'd stop trying to contact me and could focus on getting help. The narrative was sophisticated, built on just enough truth to seem plausible while inverting the actual facts. Lily, your father and I never divorced. He married Stephanie Wells while still legally married to me, which makes that marriage fraudulent. I haven't had any breakdown or psychiatric treatment. Those medical records he showed you are forgeries. I'm a federal judge. I've been working continuously for the past 6 months without any performance issues or mental health problems. Your father created a fake death certificate claiming you drowned in Lake Erie, but I suspect he did it to access a $2 million trust fund your grandparents established for you. If you're legally dead, he can control that money as my spouse and your closest surviving relative. Lily finally looked directly at me, and I saw confusion replacing certainty in her eyes. Dad said you'd make up stories about money and conspiracies. He said you'd try to manipulate me emotionally, use our relationship to make me doubt him. But Mom, if what you're saying is true, why would he go to all this trouble? Why fake my death instead of just divorcing you legitimately? The question deserved an honest answer. Because in a divorce, I'd have kept control of the trust as its designated trustee. I'd have continued managing those funds for your benefit until you turn 25. But if you're dead and I'm declared mentally incompetent, he can petition the court to be named successor trustee with full control of $2 million. Add to that our joint assets, my retirement accounts, the equity in our house, and he stands to gain close to $5 million by having me committed to psychiatric care rather than divorcing me conventionally. Lily was quiet for a long moment, processing the financial implications. He told me he was protecting me from your delusions, that making me officially dead was the only way to ensure you stopped harassing me and trying to force me back into a relationship I'd outgrown. He paid for me to move to Colorado, set me up with this job, said I could start fresh with a new name and new life. He said it was like witness protection, keeping me safe from your instability. But Mom, if you're not actually mentally ill, if those medical records are fake, then everything he told me is a lie. Come back to Ohio with me, I urged. Let me prove to you that I'm functioning normally, that your father fabricated evidence to make both you and my sister believe I was experiencing psychiatric breakdown. I have cognitive test results from yesterday showing no impairment. I have court records showing continuous judicial performance. I have Dr. Ashford's sworn statement that she never diagnosed me with any psychiatric condition. I can prove I'm telling the truth, and once you see the evidence, you'll understand what your father has done. Lily hesitated, torn between loyalty to Daniel and growing doubt about the narrative she'd been fed. If I come back, if he finds out, he'll say I'm enabling your delusions. He'll cut me off financially, shut down my bank account, take back everything he's given me. I can't risk that without being certain you're right. I understood her fear, understood the power Daniel had over her through financial control and months of psychological manipulation. Lily, I'm a federal judge with resources and authority. If you come back with me, I'll protect you legally and financially. But more than that, I need you to undergo DNA testing to compare against the body that was identified as you in the autopsy report. If that body isn't yours, and I suspect it isn't based on physical discrepancies in the medical records, then your father participated in misidentifying a corpse, possibly covering up a real death or murder. That's a serious crime, and your testimony will be crucial to prosecution. We talked for 2 hours, me presenting evidence from my phone and laptop, Lily slowly processing information that contradicted everything Daniel had told her. Eventually, she agreed to return to Ohio, to undergo DNA testing, to see the evidence firsthand before making final decisions about her father's claims. We flew back together that evening, and I took her directly to Dr. Reeves's office where he collected DNA samples for comparison testing. Results will be available in 3 to 4 days, Dr. Reeves confirmed. Judge Covington, if this young woman is your daughter and the body we autopsied was someone else, we're looking at potential homicide, fraudulent identification, and conspiracy charges. I'll need to notify law enforcement immediately once we have confirmation. I took Lily to my hotel, where we stayed in adjacent rooms and talked through the night about everything that had happened since August. She described how Daniel had approached her during summer break, told her I'd filed for divorce and was having emotional problems, suggested she consider taking a semester off school to let family tensions cool down. He'd gradually increased pressure, claiming my behavior was becoming erratic, that I'd been calling him obsessively, that I'd been showing up at his office making scenes. None of it had been true, but Lily had believed him because parents don't typically fabricate elaborate lies about the other parent's mental health. By mid-August, Daniel had convinced her that the kindest thing she could do was stage her death, allow me to grieve and move on, rather than continuing to obsess over maintaining a relationship she'd outgrown. He drove me to Lake Erie that weekend, Lily explained, told me we'd stage a drowning accident so believable that no one would question it. He had everything planned, had hired a woman who resembled me to actually go swimming and disappear so witnesses would see someone matching my description enter the water. He said the woman was a professional actress participating in what she thought was a film project. He used my dental records, provided identification, handled all the official documentation. Then he sent me to Colorado with money and a new identity, said he'd protect me from your delusions and help me start fresh. I believed him because I loved him and trusted him. But Mom, if he lied about you, if he manipulated me into faking my death for financial gain, I need to know the truth about who actually died in that lake. The realization that someone had actually drowned, that a real woman had died to facilitate Daniel's fraud, made the conspiracy far more serious. This wasn't just document fraud or financial manipulation. This was potentially murder, a calculated scheme that required someone's death to succeed. Lily, do you remember anything about the woman who supposedly played you in this staged drowning? What she looked like? What Daniel told you about her? Lily shook her head. I never met her. Daniel said it was better if we didn't interact, to maintain plausible deniability. He showed me a photo once, a woman who did look similar to me, blonde hair and athletic build. He said her name was Amy or Andrea, something with an A. He said she was an aspiring actress from Cleveland who needed money and was happy to participate in what she thought was an elaborate prank video or independent film project. Lawrence Brennan, working overnight, cross-referenced missing persons reports from the Cleveland area in August with physical descriptions matching Lily's general appearance. He found a report filed on August 17th for a woman named Amy Thornton, age 23, blonde hair, 5 feet 8 inches tall, last seen leaving her apartment in Cleveland on August 14th for what she told her roommate was a paid acting gig near Lake Erie. Amy had been an aspiring actress working restaurant jobs to support herself, exactly the type of person who might accept cash to participate in what she believed was a film project. Her body had never been found, her disappearance remained unsolved, and her physical description matched the autopsy report precisely. Daniel hired Amy Thornton to play Lily in a fake drowning video, I said quietly, showing Lily the missing persons report on my laptop. But instead of staging a fake drowning, he actually drowned her or had someone drown her. Then he used her body as yours, manipulated the dental records to create a false identification, and covered up Amy's murder by making it appear to be your accidental death. Lily, your father is a murderer. He killed an innocent woman to facilitate fraud and gain access to trust funds, and he would have succeeded completely if I hadn't discovered the death certificate by accident and started investigating. Lily started crying, the reality of what her father had done overwhelming her. He killed someone? He murdered a woman just to fake my death? Mom, I helped him. I left town, changed my name, disappeared so people would believe I was dead. I'm complicit in Amy Thornton's murder because I provided the motive and cover story he needed. I held her while she sobbed, understanding her guilt but also recognizing she'd been manipulated by someone she trusted completely. Lily, you're a victim too. Daniel lied to you, used you, made you believe you were helping me by disappearing. You didn't know anyone would die. You have no criminal liability because you lacked the intent and knowledge required for conspiracy. But now that you know the truth, you need to cooperate with law enforcement to ensure your father faces appropriate consequences. Dr. Reeves called 3 days later with DNA results that confirmed what we already knew. The body autopsied and identified as Lily Ann Covington showed no biological relationship to me. The woman who drowned was not my daughter, was almost certainly Amy Thornton based on the matching physical characteristics and timing. Dr. Reeves had immediately contacted the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office and the FBI, providing them with his findings and my allegations of fraud and murder. Within hours, investigators were serving search warrants on Daniel's office, house, and financial records. The evidence they found was overwhelming. Emails between Daniel and Stephanie Wells discussing the plan to fake Lily's death and access the trust funds. Financial records showing Daniel had paid Amy Thornton $5,000 in cash days before she disappeared. Drafts of the forged psychiatric evaluation documents saved on Daniel's home computer. Documentation of his fraudulent marriage to Stephanie while still legally married to me. And most damning, a video file recovered from Daniel's deleted computer files showing him and another man restraining Amy Thornton at the lakeshore, forcing her into the water, holding her under while she struggled. The video ended with Amy's body floating face down, and Daniel's voice saying, "Make sure the dental records match before you call the Coast Guard." Daniel was arrested at his law firm on a Wednesday morning, charged with first-degree murder, fraud, conspiracy, document forgery, and multiple other crimes. Stephanie Wells was arrested simultaneously, charged as an accessory and co-conspirator. The arrests made national news because of the unusual circumstances. A corporate attorney who'd murdered an aspiring actress to fake his daughter's death and gain access to trust funds, while simultaneously having his federal judge wife declared mentally ill to control her assets. The story had every element that drives media coverage: family betrayal, institutional manipulation, financial greed, and cold-blooded murder. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.